Hi, this is Kendall Boyson, professional life and recovery coach, and you're listening to Encouragementology, the practice of instilling hope. Hi there. Thanks for joining me. On this show, we're exploring the sneaky ways we lose control without even realizing we've handed it over. Have you ever found yourself doing something again and thinking, why do I keep doing this? Maybe it's late night scrolling, that one more drink, the need to say yes when you're screaming no inside. These patterns creep in, settle down, and before you know it, they've built a nest in your life. We call them habits, but sometimes they're more than that. Sometimes they're hangups, hurts, or full-blown addictions masquerading as routines. And here's the kicker. They don't just take up space. They slowly take the wheel. What if you're not as in control as you thought? What if what you think is manageable is actually managing you? Today we're going deeper, not to shame or scold, but to shine a gentle light. Because denial is tricky. It whispers that you're fine, that it's not affecting anyone else. But the truth is, what controls you changes you. It touches your relationships, your work, your peace. And the hardest part? Admitting it. Facing yourself in the mirror and saying, this isn't working anymore. But here's the good news. Awareness is the first most powerful step toward freedom. So today, we're cracking open the doors of truth with compassion, curiosity, and a roadmap to reclaiming your power. Before we can take control back, we have to understand what we're really dealing with. So let's break it down. Habit versus addiction. A habit is something we do regularly, often without thinking, like brushing your teeth or making coffee first thing in the morning. Habits can be helpful, neutral, or harmful. They're built through repetition and reinforced by small rewards. Hello, dopamine. On the other hand, addiction takes things further. It's compulsive. It's often used to escape, numb, or gain relief. And it continues despite negative consequences. The line between habit and addiction can blur, especially when the habit becomes something we rely on emotionally or physically. Let's look at denial and self-deception. Denial is a powerful defense mechanism. It protects us from shame, fear, discomfort, but it also keeps us stuck. When we're in denial, we minimize, rationalize, or outright ignore what's happening. We say things like, it's not that bad, I can stop anytime, or it's not hurting anyone. But these lies we tell ourselves can build a wall so thick that even when we're suffering, we can't admit we need help. The longer we stay there, the harder it is to see a way out. Did you know there's grief of letting go? Yes, grief. Because even when we're giving up something toxic, we're still letting go of something familiar. This is where the 5 stages of grief come into play, and we'll dig into those a little later. Number 1, denial. This isn't a problem. I've got this under control. Number 2, anger. Why do I even have to deal with this? It's not fair. 3, bargaining. If I only do it on the weekends, that's fine, right? 4, depression. I feel helpless. I'm tired of trying and failing. And 5, acceptance. This is real, and I'm ready to do something about it. We grieve because we're changing. We're letting go of the version of ourselves we thought we needed, and that's not easy. But it is powerful. Here's the truth. You don't live in a vacuum. Whatever is controlling you, whether it's overworking, people-pleasing, numbing, or isolating, it doesn't just affect you. It impacts your energy, your presence, your relationships, and your potential. The scary part? You might not even know the full extent until you start making a change. So let's pause and get a little introspective. You may not think of yourself as someone who's controlled by a habit, pattern, or coping mechanism, but sometimes we don't see it until we slow down and really look. So take a moment, get quiet, and answer these questions honestly, just for you. There's no right or wrong answers here, just a chance to notice what's been going on beneath the surface. Number 1. What do you turn to when you're overwhelmed, sad, or anxious? What do you turn to when you're overwhelmed, sad, or anxious? Let's go a little deeper. Is it food, shopping, alcohol, overworking, scrolling, or staying busy? Does this behavior make you feel better or just distracted? Have you ever said, "I deserve this," as a way to justify it? Number 2, have you ever told yourself this isn't a problem, but still feel guilty or out of control? Have you ever told yourself this isn't a problem, but still feel guilty or out of control? Do you find yourself making rules you don't keep? Only on weekends, just one more episode after this project. Is there a part of you that worries what might happen if you stopped? Do you feel shame or secrecy around it? Number 3, how is this behavior affecting the people around you? How is this behavior affecting the people around you? Let's be honest. Are you emotionally unavailable to those closest to you? Are your loved ones walking on eggshells even if they haven't said it out loud? Are you missing moments, milestones, and opportunities because this behavior takes priority? Let's take a mirror moment. What if you held up a mirror and really saw what's been controlling you? Not with judgment, but with curiosity and compassion. You might be protecting yourself. You might be surviving the best way you know how. But you also might be ready for something better. Sometimes the first step isn't fixing it. It's just telling the truth about it. So take a breath. You don't need to solve it all today. But what would shift if you were simply willing to look at it? Okay, now that we've reflected on what might be controlling us, let's bring in some clarity. The folks at Relevance Recovery put together a helpful breakdown in an article called Habit versus Addiction, Understanding the Difference. It's a clear-eyed look at how we can reframe what we're dealing with, whether it's habits that help us or harmful patterns that harm us. Ever wonder why you can't stop checking your phone or find yourself mindlessly snacking when you're not even hungry? The line between habit and addiction can be blurry, but understanding the difference is crucial to gaining control over your behavior. Habits and addictions are shaped by a complex interplay of biological, psychological, and environmental factors. So here are some key data and statistics. According to the National Institute on Drug Abuse, an estimated 130 people die every day in the United States from drug overdoses. Drug addiction affects millions of Americans across all demographics. Research has found that people who are genetically predisposed to seeking out novel experiences and sensations are at a higher risk for developing addictions. However, genes are not destiny, and the environment plays a large role. Habits are formed through neural pathways in the brain that strengthen with repetition. It takes an average of 66 days for a new habit to form, but habits can be broken with focused effort and replacement with new routines. Addictions involve changes in the brain's reward system that go beyond habitual behaviors. Addicted individuals often experience intense cravings and a loss of control over their behaviors. About 9% of Americans over the age of 12 struggle with a substance use disorder, while only 0.2 to 0.3% have a gambling disorder, according to the National Institute on Drug Abuse. However, many people exhibit addictive behaviors related to things like social media, video games, sex, food, and more. A habit is a routine behavior that becomes automatic over time, while an addiction is a compulsive behavior that is difficult to control. Although habits and addictions share some similarities, there are a few key differences to understand. Number 1. Loss of control. The main distinction between a habit and an addiction is loss of control. With a habit, you remain in control of your actions and can choose to stop the behavior if needed. An addiction, on the other hand, involves a craving that becomes uncontrollable, often continuing the behavior even when there are negative consequences. Number 2. Impact on daily life. Another sign of addiction is if the behavior begins to interfere with work or relationships. Habits typically don't cause issues with day-to-day functioning, whereas an addiction can become the main focus of someone's life and compromise responsibilities. Number 3, difficulty quitting. It's relatively easy to break a habit through conscious effort and willpower. An addiction is much harder to quit, often requiring professional help or a customized treatment program. The urge to relapse into addictive behaviors tends to be very strong. Number 4, underlying cause. Habits develop from repetition and reinforcement over time, serving a utilitarian purpose. Addictions tend to be linked to an underlying issue like anxiety, depression, trauma, or low self-esteem. The addictive behavior acts as an escape or a way to cope with negative emotions or events. The good news here is there are strategies for overcoming addictions and replacing unhealthy habits with positive ones. Understanding the difference is the first step towards making lasting changes and living a balanced life. With support and commitment, you can recover from addiction. Let's look at the psychology behind habit formation. Habits form gradually through a process of reinforcement and reward. As we repeat behavior and experience positive outcomes, neurological pathways in our brain strengthen, making that behavior automatic. Once a habit forms, we can do it without having to think about it consciously. Our habits shape a huge portion of our daily lives, from how we wake up in the morning to what we choose to eat. While good habits can benefit us, bad habits and addictions negatively impact our health, relationships, and quality of life. The psychology of habit formation involves several key factors. One is cue, a trigger that prompts the habit to start, like a time of day, emotional state, or a place. The cue signals your brain to go into autopilot and perform the habitual behavior. Then you have routine, the actual habit or sequence of behaviors. This can be physical, mental, or emotional. The routine is the most important part of the habit loop. Reward. That's the benefit you gain from the habit. This could be physical, like a cigarette, emotional, like comfort from a daily routine, or mental, like satisfaction from checking email. The reward further reinforces the habit loop. And you have craving. That's the desire and anticipation of the reward. Cravings drive habits and make them hard to break. They activate the reward centers in our brain, even before we engage in habitual behavior. Understanding how habits form is the first step to gaining control over them. By identifying the cues and rewards that drive your habits, you can work to build healthy new routines and overcome unhealthy addictions. With practice and persistence, you can rewire your habits and transform your life for the better. The difference between an unhealthy habit and a harmful addiction can be subtle. So here are some ways to determine if a behavior has crossed the line into an addiction. Number 1, loss of control. With an addiction, you feel unable to stop or limit the behavior, even if you want to. You may make repeated attempts to quit or cut back, but ultimately fail. An unhealthy habit is something you can choose to stop, even if it's difficult. You're still in control. Number 2, consequences don't matter. When addicted, you continue the behavior even when it causes significant problems in your life. Addiction becomes more important than relationships, health, work, or financial stability. Unhealthy habits may have minor consequences, but you can weigh the pros and cons and make adjustments. 3, physical dependence. Addictions often involve physical dependence, meaning you need the substance or behavior to function normally. Quitting abruptly can lead to withdrawal symptoms. Habits typically don't cause withdrawal symptoms or the inability to feel normal without them. 4, time spent. Addictions occupy an increasingly large amount of your time and mental space. You may spend hours engaged in the behavior each day, constantly thinking about it or planning how to do it next. Unhealthy habits don't take over your schedule or dominate your thinking. You can still enjoy and focus on other life activities. 5, secrecy. Addictions are often kept hidden from others due to feelings of guilt or shame. You may lie to cover up the depth of your addiction. Unhealthy habits, while problematic, are usually not kept a secret or a source of strong shame. You remain open about the behavior with close ones. The path to overcoming addiction starts with recognizing the problem. Be honest with yourself about whether a behavior has become an addiction. Then seek help from medical professionals. Building awareness and a strong support system are the first steps to recovery. There are always alternatives to unhealthy habits and addictions, and you have the power to create positive change. Okay, so in a nutshell, the Relevance Recovery team compares habits and addictions to friendly and hostile neighbors. A habit might be your quiet neighbor, predictable, maybe a little noisy sometimes, but generally manageable and confined. Addiction, on the other hand, is like the neighbor who invades your home, takes over your space, and refuses to leave, even when it's causing problems. They highlight 3 key differences: control, impact, and ease of stopping. So control, with habits, you decide if it stays or goes. With addiction, it decides for you. Impact, habits can help or simply exist. Addictions interfere with your daily life. And ease of stopping, habits can be changed through conscious effort. Addictions often require deeper support or help. In simple terms, they encourage self-awareness. No shame, no pressure, just a deeper understanding. Knowing what you're facing is the first step towards deciding to address it. Here's the thing. We all have behaviors that sneak under the radar. Maybe it's the nightly glass or 2 of wine, the endless scroll before bed, or the way we isolate when we're overwhelmed. The question isn't, am I broken? The real question is, am I being honest with myself? So let's walk through a short but powerful action plan to help you move from unconscious behavior to conscious choice. Got your pen? Are you ready? Number 1, name it without shame. That's so hard, but it's such an important place to start. Call out the behavior you're questioning. Don't justify it. Don't label it. Just name it. Here are some examples. I binge watch TV to avoid stress. I snap at people when I'm anxious. I eat when I'm bored. Awareness is the beginning of freedom. Number 2, track the trigger. What's the emotional event or time of day that cues this behavior? Think about it. If you're documenting it, you might be able to step back and actually take a look at it to get to the root. I always do this after a stressful meeting. I scroll when I feel lonely. Write it down or say it out loud. You're building a pattern map. Number 3, zoom out and ask why. Take a moment to ask, what is this behavior doing for me? What need is it meeting? Or what pain is it masking? This is where the honesty comes in. You might realize this isn't about the snack. It's about feeling seen. Number 4, swap it, don't stop it just yet. So instead of white-knuckling your way to change, try replacing the behavior with something that still comforts, but maybe in a healthier way. So instead of doom scrolling, go outside for 5 minutes, kick off your shoes, put your toes in the grass. Instead of pouring a drink, text a friend or write in your journal. The goal here isn't perfection, it's progress. Number 5, practice and pause. Build in a short pause between trigger and action. This gives you space to make the appropriate decision. So, before I do this thing, I'm going to breathe for 10 seconds and ask, do I want this? Or do I need something else right now? That tiny moment of awareness is where real change starts. And remember, just because you've always done something doesn't mean you always have to. Grace is allowed. Progress counts. And every pause is a powerful win. Now that we've built our action plan, let's explore surrender. What it actually feels like to walk through admitting the truth, struggle through the emotional waves, and ultimately reach a place of acceptance that leads to real change. Recovery by the Sea has a powerful article by David Faraci that applies the classic 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance to the context of addiction and deep habit patterns. It brilliantly illustrates how letting go of control over a harmful behavior mirrors the emotional journey of grief. The 5 stages of grief were first identified by psychiatrist Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross in 1969, as published in her book on death and dying. She contended that people suffering from a terminal illness, as well as those who experience the death of a loved one, go through different stages of emotions until they can reach a resolution. As I mentioned, the 5 stages of grief include denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Dr. Kubler-Ross later said that these emotions don't necessarily have to occur in a linear fashion, but rather were the emotions most commonly encountered during periods of grief. So denial is characterized by the person's outright objection or non-acceptance to the situation and attempts to find convincing evidence that it's not true. Anger can be directed at other individuals, the person themselves, God, or circumstances contributing to the situation. Bargaining occurs when the person begins to make changes in a last-ditch effort to gain control over the event causing the grief. Depression and sadness start to set in as the person begins to realize that bargaining is not enough to alter reality. And acceptance is often the last stage, as the person accepts reality, reaches an emotional balance, and begins to take actions that reflect this acknowledgement. Of course, not everyone goes through every stage, and people can sometimes revert to previous stages. The concept of the 5 stages of grief is not perfect, but it does offer a model that can be beneficial to those who experience events that result in extreme sadness. So here is how addiction applies to these 5 stages. Denial. It's often, again, the first sign. It's the first sign that there's a serious problem. Yes, people deny things because sometimes they aren't true, but often denial occurs because the question of addiction has already been brought forth. And the question is usually only asked in seriousness when there is some evidential basis for the inquiry. Denial occurs when either the addict, alcoholic, or person close to them refuses to believe that the problem exists or that it's serious enough to warrant concern. It's common for persons close to the individual to move beyond denial much sooner than the person who is addicted. Anger. Anger begins to manifest as the person with an addiction starts to realize that there is indeed a problem. The addict or alcoholic may be angry that they can no longer use the substance, or is unable to use a substance like alcohol like other normal people. And sometimes the anger serves as a mask for fear that they may be unable to quit despite the acknowledged need to do so. Interestingly, anger is often directed internally at the addict or alcoholic themselves, or at others when they try to intervene, rather than the substance or the people who are supplying the substance. Bargaining in this case occurs as the addict is trying to mitigate the fears of someone else or to avoid conflict or legal trouble. For example, they may make promises to stop using in order to receive help. They may begin seeking treatment as a way to avoid punitive consequences. Or they might start bargaining with themselves as a way to try to cut back on substance use rather than quit. During this stage, they are unwilling to fully change or accept consequences and instead try to negotiate with themselves and others as an attempt to merely mitigate symptoms of the problem rather than solve it. In other words, a person in this stage just wants the fallout from the addiction to go away using minimal effort. Depression occurs as the addict or alcoholic finally realizes that they need to live without their substance of choice or suffer from their addiction for the rest of their life. This may co-occur with the withdrawal stage, which in of itself may cause depression, as the person begins to feel the absence of the drug and also reflects on the damage done to themselves and others. Acceptance is not a mere admission there's a problem. This can be recognized at a much earlier stage, like during anger or bargaining. Rather, acceptance is when the addict or alcoholic agrees to take action toward recovery. This stage is focused on goals, decision-making, and the identification of solutions which can help the person achieve sobriety. So in a nutshell, David Faraci compares surrendering to letting go to riding a turbulent roller coaster where you don't see the track ahead. First comes denial, where you insist, this isn't a problem. Then anger. Why does this have to feel so big? Followed by bargaining, where you negotiate with yourself for control. Next is depression, the heavy weight of realizing it's bigger than you thought. And finally, acceptance, where you allow yourself to ask for help and believe change is possible. It's raw, unpretentious, and relatable, reminding us that surrender isn't defeat. It's the pivot point where healing begins. Before we close, I want to leave you with some more clarity and motivation, something that outlines the path from recognizing your patterns to intentionally changing them. That's why I chose this inspirational message from Thomas Frank. Change your mindset, change your life. It's a practical, no-fluff talk on how shifting your thoughts and beliefs can be the turning point for real transformation. Let this be a reminder. Change often starts in the mind before it shows up in your actions. Take a few minutes to soak this in, and then we'll wrap up with a challenge that puts it all into motion.
95% of who we are by the time we're 35 years old is a memorized set of behaviors, emotional reactions, unconscious habits, hardwired attitudes, beliefs, and perceptions that function like a computer program. So then a person can say with their 5% of their conscious mind, I want to be healthy, I want to be happy, I want to be free. But the body's on a whole different program. People grab their cell phone, they check their WhatsApp, they check their text, they check their emails, they check Facebook, they tweet something, they do Instagram, they check the news, and now they feel really connected to everything that's known in their life. And then they go through a series of routine behaviors. They get out of bed on the same side, they go to the toilet, they get a cup of coffee, they take a shower, they get dressed, they drive to work the same way, they do the same things, they see the same people, they push the same emotional buttons, and that becomes the routine, and it becomes like a program. So now they've lost their free will to a program, and there's no unseen hand doing it to them. So when it comes time to change, the redundancy of that cycle becomes a subconscious program. Most people then wait for crisis or trauma or disease or diagnosis. They wait for loss, some tragedy to make up their mind to change. And my message is, why wait? And you can learn and change in a state of pain and suffering, or you can learn and change in a state of joy and inspiration. And I think right now, the cool thing is that people are waking up. If you're not being defined by a vision of the future, then you're left with the old memories of the past, and you will be predictable in your life. How you think and how you feel creates your state of being. By closing your eyes and mentally rehearsing some action, if you're truly present, the brain does not know the difference between what you're imaging and what you're experiencing. So then you begin to install the neurological hardware in your brain to look like the event has already occurred. Now, your brain is no longer a record of the past. Now it's a map to the future. And if you keep doing it, priming it that way, the hardware becomes a software program. And who knows, you just may start acting like a happy person. And then I think the hardest part is to teach our body emotionally what the future will feel like ahead of the actual experience. The hardest part about change is not making the same choices you did the day before, period. And the moment you decide to make a different choice, get ready, because it's going to feel uncomfortable. So if you think 60 to 70,000 thoughts in one day, and we do, and 90% of those thoughts are the same thoughts as the day before, and you believe that your thoughts have something to do with your destiny, your life's not going to change very much, because the same thought leads to the same choice leads to the same behavior creates the same experience, and the same experience produces the same emotion. A habit is a redundant set of automatic, unconscious thoughts, behaviors, and emotions that's acquired through repetition. So if you think about it, people wake up in the morning, they begin to think about their problems. Those problems are circuits of memories in the brain. Each one of those memories are connected to people and things at certain times and places. And if the brain is a record of the past, the moment they start their day, they're already thinking in the past. Each one of those memories has an emotion. Emotions are the end product of past experiences. So the moment they recall those memories of their problems, they all of a sudden feel unhappy, they feel sad, they feel pain. Now, how you think and how you feel creates your state of being. So the person's entire state of being when they start their day is in the past. So what does that mean? The familiar past will sooner or later be predictable future. So if you believe that your thoughts have something to do with your destiny, and you can't think greater than how you feel, or feelings have become the means of thinking, by very definition of emotions, you're thinking in the past. And for the most part, you're going to keep creating the same life. I think that the bigger thing is that we keep firing and wiring those circuits. They become more hardwired. So you have a thought, and then the program runs. But it's the emotion that follows the thought. If you have a fearful thought, you're going to feel anxiety. The moment you feel anxiety, your brain's checking in with your body and saying, yeah, you're pretty anxious. So then you start thinking more corresponding thoughts equal to how you feel. Well, the redundancy of that cycle conditions the body to become the mind. So now, when it comes time to change, a person steps into that river of change and they make a different choice, and all of a sudden, they don't feel the same way. So the body says, well, you've been doing this for 35 years. You're going to just stop suffering and stop feeling guilty and stop feeling shameful, and you're not going to complain or blame or make excuses or feel sorry for yourself. Well, the body's in the unknown. So the body says, I want to return back to familiar territory. So the body starts influencing the mind, and it says, start tomorrow. You're too much like your mother. You'll never change. This isn't going to work for you. This doesn't feel right. And so if you respond to that thought as if it's true, that same thought will lead to the same choice, which will lead to the same behavior, which will create the same experience, which will produce the same emotion. The stronger the emotional reaction you have to some experience in your life, the higher the emotional quotient, the more you pay attention to the cause. And the moment the brain puts all of its attention on the cause, it takes a snapshot, and that's called a memory. So long-term memories are created from very highly emotional experiences. So what happens then is that people think neurologically within the circuitry of that experience, and they feel chemically within the boundaries of those emotions. And so when you have an emotional reaction to someone or something, most people think that they can't control their emotional reaction. Well, it turns out if you allow that emotional reaction, it's called a refractory period, to last for hours or days, that's called a mood. I say to someone, hey, what's up? You say, I'm in a mood. Well, why are you in a mood? Well, I had this thing happen to me 5 days ago, and I'm having one long emotional reaction. If you keep that same emotional reaction going on for weeks or months, that's called temperament. Why is he so bitter? I don't know, let's ask him. Why is he so bitter? Why are you bitter? Well, I had this thing happen to me 9 months ago. And if you keep that same emotional reaction going on for years on end, that's called a personality trait. And so learning how to shorten your refractory period of emotional reactions is really where the work starts. So then people, when they have an event, what they do is they keep recalling the event, because the emotions of stress hormones, the survival emotions, are saying pay attention to what happened, because you want to be prepared if it happens again. So as you become familiar with the thoughts, the behaviors, and the emotions of the old self, you're retiring that old self. As you fire and wire new thoughts and condition the body into a new emotional state, if you do that enough times, it'll begin to become familiar to you. So it's so important, just like a garden. If you're planting a garden, you got to get rid of the weeds. You got to take the plants from the past year and you got to pull them out. The rocks that sift to the top that are like our emotional blocks, they have to be removed. The soil has to be tenderized and broken down. We have to make room to plant a new garden. So primarily, we learn the most about ourselves and others when we're uncomfortable. All organisms in nature can tolerate short-term stress. You know, a deer gets chased by a pack of coyotes. When it outruns the coyotes, it goes back to grazing and the event is over. And the definition of stress is when your brain and body are knocked out of balance, out of homeostasis. The stress response is what the body innately does to return itself back to order. So you're driving down the road, someone cuts you off, you jam on the brakes, you give them the finger, and then you settle back down and the event is over and boom, now everything's back to normal. But what if it's not a predator that's waiting for you outside the cave, but what if it's your coworker sitting right next to you? And all day long, you're turning on those chemicals because they're pushing all your emotional buttons. When you turn on the stress response and you can't turn it off, now you're headed for disease because no organism in nature can live in emergency mode for that extended period of time. It's a scientific fact that the hormones of stress downregulate genes and create disease, long-term effects. Human beings, because of the size of the neocortex, we can turn on the stress response just by thought alone. We can think about our problems and turn on those chemicals. That means then our thoughts could make us sick. So if it's possible that our thoughts could make us sick, is it possible then our thoughts could make us well? And the answer is absolutely yes.
If you want to share encouragementology with a friend who knows they're not alone in this journey of self-discovery, you can visit encouragementology.com or anywhere you stream your content to receive this episode and all others. Check out the show notes for the 5-day journaling companion and follow us on Facebook and Instagram for additional encouragement throughout the week. So I challenge you. Name what's been silently calling the shots in your life, whether it's a habit, a hurt, or a hang-up, and meet it with honesty instead of avoidance. Then take one small step toward releasing its grip, reminding yourself that you're not powerless. You are in progress. I know you can do it. Thank you for listening to Encouragementology with Kendall Boyson, where we find positive ways to handle some of life's challenges.
I stumbled through until the path was clear. That's when I found